Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into the world of webcam security.
Ooh, interesting.
Specifically, how secure those little cameras on our laptops really are or aren't. We've got some pretty interesting opinions and insights from a Hacker News discussion about malware that can manipulate webcam LEDs.
Really?
It's honestly a bit of a rabbit hole.
It's not as simple as it seems. We think that little LED light is like a telltale sign. Like, oh, the camera's on.
Yeah.
But as you'll see, that's not always the case.
Yeah, I was reading through some of the comments, and people are talking about using tape and sticky notes over their webcams.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder.
It definitely speaks to a certain level of concern, which is what we're going to try to unpack today. We're going to explore the tech behind these things, the vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
what you can do to protect your privacy, all that good stuff.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How do these webcam LEDs even work? Is it as simple as a camera turning on and the light turning on?
Ideally, you want the webcam's LED to be wired directly to the camera's power supply. So, think of it like a security guard's standing watch. If the camera's on, the guard's on duty too. LED light is their way of signaling that. This direct connection makes it much harder for any sneaky software to mess with the light.
That makes sense. So no software trickery, no chance of the light being manipulated.
Right. One user in the thread put it perfectly. The LED should be connected to the camera's power. It should not be operable via any firmware in any way.
Okay.
But, and here's where things get interesting, not all webcams are designed with this level of security in mind.
Oh, okay. So are you saying some manufacturers might cut corners and use software to control the LED instead of wiring it directly?
Exactly. And that opens up a potential vulnerability. Because if the LED is software controlled, then malware that can control your computer could, theoretically, turn the camera on without triggering the LED.
Whoa. Okay, so someone could be watching me through my webcam and I wouldn't even know it. Because the LED light isn't reliable?
Unfortunately, yes. And it's not just theoretical. The Hacker News discussion you shared even mentions a specific exploit on the ThinkPad X230 where malware can disable the webcam LED while the camera is recording.
Wow. Suddenly those sticky note solutions are looking a little less paranoid, huh?
Well, it just highlights the fact that people are looking for ways to take control of their privacy, especially when it comes to something as personal as their webcam.
Right. And it looks like different manufacturers are taking different approaches to this whole thing. You mentioned Apple earlier. What's their stance on webcam security?
Apple claims that their newer MacBooks have a more secure hardware-based LED system.
Okay.
And so they say it's impossible to turn on the camera without the LED lighting up
Oh.
because it's all controlled at the hardware level.
Okay, so that sounds a lot more secure than the software-controlled LEDs we were talking about earlier. Does that mean Apple users are completely safe?
Well, not so fast.
Well,
There are always going to be people looking for ways to exploit vulnerabilities. And even with a hardware-based system, some users in the thread are still skeptical.
interesting. If the LED is tied directly to the hardware, how could it be manipulated?
Well, some argue that highly sophisticated malware could still potentially find a way, perhaps by attacking the camera's firmware itself.
Okay. And for those of us who aren't super techy, what exactly is firmware?
You can think of firmware as the basic operating system for your webcam.
Okay.
So it controls how the camera functions at a very fundamental level. The problem is, if malware can infect your firmware, it can potentially bypass even hardware security measures.
Oh, so it's like the malware is going a level deeper to take control.
Yeah, it is a concern,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that security is often about layers. Even if one layer is compromised, it doesn't mean all hope is lost.
Okay, that makes sense. So back to Apple. They say they have this hardware-based LED system, but some users are still concerned about potential vulnerabilities. What else is being discussed in the thread about Apple's approach?
Well, there's an interesting comment from someone who claims to be a former Apple security engineer who actually worked on the MacBook camera security design.
Wow.
And he backs up Apple's claim and even mentions that the LED stays on for 3 seconds after the camera is used,
Yeah.
just to increase the chances of the user noticing it.
3 seconds. That's certainly more noticeable than a quick flash
Yeah.
you might miss if you're not looking directly at the screen. Is that enough to put people's minds at ease?
Some users think it's a step in the right direction, but others argue that even 3 seconds isn't long enough, especially if you're away from your computer. One user even suggested a 15-minute minimum duration for the LED.
15 minutes. This seems a little excessive, doesn't it?
It might sound extreme,
Yeah.
but it shows how seriously some people are taking this issue. They want to be absolutely sure that if their camera is on, they'll know about it. Others have suggested a two-color LED system, One for recording, one for just being on.
Hmm.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
But the discussion highlights the various levels of concern, the need for solutions.
It's definitely a reminder that security is an ongoing conversation, even with big companies like Apple. Speaking of Apple, it's interesting to note that their recent iPhones have adopted a similar hardware-based LED system for the camera. Seems like they're taking these concerns seriously across their product lines.
It does appear that way. But as we've discussed, even hardware-based systems aren't foolproof. And the Hacker News discussion highlights a crucial point. Physical solutions can offer a much higher level of confidence when it comes to webcam security.
You're talking about things like those built-in shutters you see on some ThinkPads, right?
Exactly.
A simple mechanical way to block the camera when you're not using it.
And there are plenty of DIY options too.
Oh, okay.
Users in the thread mentioned everything from external webcam covers, some even linked to 3D printable designs,
Wow, okay.
to good old-fashioned tape.
It seems like people are getting pretty creative with their solutions.
It's about finding what works best for you.
Right.
Some mentioned using a piece of a sticky note, even a folded playing card.
Oh, okay.
Simple, yet effective.
Yeah. But you have to be careful about sticky residue damaging your screen.
Right.
I remember one user mentioning they clean it off with isopropyl alcohol.
Good point.
Just a little tip.
It's all about being mindful of those little details. And this leads us to an often overlooked aspect of this whole conversation. Microphone security.
Right. Microphones are always listening.
Yeah.
They pose a significant privacy risk, perhaps even bigger than webcams, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As one user in the thread put it, conversations are much more privileged information than potentially seeing someone in their underwear.
Good point. And microphones are a lot harder to physically block than webcams. You can't just slap a sticker over a microphone and call it a day.
Exactly.
Right.
It requires a more nuanced approach.
Yeah.
Some users are advocating for hardware kill switches for both microphones and webcams.
Oh, okay.
Think of it in a physical disconnect, like flipping a switch to cut off the power completely.
So having control at the most fundamental level
Yes.
to ensure that the hardware itself can't be manipulated.
Precisely. This brings us to a broader discussion about holistic device security, addressing all potential vulnerabilities, not just the obvious ones.
And thankfully, there are laptops out there that are starting to incorporate these features. Several users in the thread praised the Framework laptop, which has physical kill switches for both the microphone and the camera.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see manufacturers responding to these concerns.
For sure.
And it reinforces the importance of consumer demand in driving innovation in the realm of privacy and security.
That's a great point. When companies see that consumers are demanding products that prioritize privacy, they're more likely to deliver.
Absolutely.
But even with kill switches, what about wireless headphones with built-in microphones? That audio is still being transmitted, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great observation.
Yeah.
And it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the situation.
Right.
Wireless headphones certainly complicate the picture. It's yet another reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. Being aware of the potential vulnerabilities is a great first step.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before we jump back into that Hacker News thread, something you said in the last part really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
It was about how some people believe if an attacker is already in your system,
Yeah.
it's game over.
Right.
What do you make of that argument?
It's a fatalistic view,
Mm-hmm.
but I can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, if malware has compromised your system to the point where it can control your webcam,
Right.
it's likely already accessed other sensitive data.
Yeah.
Like passwords or financial information.
So in those cases, worrying about the webcam almost seems secondary.
Yeah, kind of like closing the barn door after the horse is bolted.
Right. Exactly.
But it's important to remember that security works in layers.
Okay.
Just because one layer is compromised doesn't mean all is lost.
Okay.
Even if an attacker has gained a foothold, limiting their access and preventing further damage is still incredibly valuable.
So it's like damage control.
Exactly.
Contain the breach, minimize the impact.
Exactly. And remember, not everyone has the same level of risk. For someone who values their privacy above all else,
Right.
even the possibility of their webcam being compromised is unacceptable.
Yeah.
They might not have anything incriminating on their machine,
Right.
but the very act of being watched feels like a violation.
Yeah. It's about feeling safe and secure in your own space.
Exactly.
Even if there's nothing objectively bad happening.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another layer of this conversation. The legal and ethical implications of webcam hacking. It's not just about someone remotely watching you. It's about how that information can be used against you.
Right. One user shared a story about receiving a phishing email,
Oh, wow.
claiming to have embarrassing webcam footage of them, a blatant attempt to extort money.
Ugh, that's awful.
And to make matters worse, the email included a Google Maps photo of their old house.
Oh, no.
It shows how data breaches and social engineering can be used to target individuals in very personal and unsettling ways.
It really brings home the human cost of these attacks. It's not just about technology. It's about people's lives being disrupted
Yeah.
and their sense of security violated.
Absolutely. But it's not all doom and gloom. The Hacker News discussion also highlights some positive developments.
Oh, okay.
Many users pointed out that Apple's commitment to webcam security has improved over the years.
Yeah. In what way?
They seem to be taking a more proactive approach.
Okay.
One commenter even mentioned a case where Apple was sued for allowing schools to secretly activate student webcams.
Wow, really?
Seems that incident, along with growing public concern about privacy, has prompted them to take a stronger stance.
It's encouraging to see them responding to public pressure and prioritizing user privacy.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, they're extending this approach to iPhones as well.
Right. The newer iPhones now have that more secure, hardware-based LED system for the camera.
Yeah.
Just like the MacBooks.
So it seems like there's been some progress made, at least on the hardware side of things.
There has been progress,
Mm.
but it's an ongoing process. As technology evolves, so do the methods of attack. We can't just sit back and assume everything is taken care of. We need to stay vigilant.
So what can we do? What concrete steps can people take to protect themselves? Especially considering that even hardware solutions aren't foolproof.
Well, as we've discussed, physical solutions like webcam covers and kill switches still offer a high level of confidence.
Right.
You're not relying on software or hoping that a light is telling the truth. You're physically blocking the camera or cutting off its power supply.
Taking control back into your own hands?
Exactly. And supporting companies that prioritize user privacy is also crucial.
Okay.
The Framework laptop, with its physical kill switches for both the microphone and the camera, was praised numerous times in the Hacker News thread.
Yeah.
It demonstrates that companies can prioritize security without sacrificing usability.
It sets a great example for the industry.
Yeah.
When consumers see these kinds of products available, it puts pressure on other manufacturers to step up their game.
Consumer demand is a powerful force.
Absolutely.
The more we demand products that prioritize our privacy, the more likely we are to see those products become the norm.
But even with all these precautions, it feels like a bit of a losing battle sometimes. Technology is moving so fast,
Yeah.
and the line between convenience and privacy keeps getting blurrier.
That's a very valid point, and one that was raised by a user in the thread. As we rely more and more on video conferencing and smart devices, it becomes harder to maintain control over our data.
Right.
It's a trade-off that we all have to grapple with.
Yeah, what data are we comfortable sharing? What level of privacy are we willing to sacrifice for convenience? These are important questions.
It's about finding that balance,
Right.
that sweet spot, where we can enjoy the benefits of technology without compromising our core values. And that's a conversation we need to keep having, both individually and as a society.
So we've talked about hardware solutions, the legal and ethical implications,
Right.
and the importance of consumer demand.
Right.
What other interesting insights emerged from the Hacker News thread? What else did people have to say?
There were quite a few insightful comments, actually. One thing that struck me was how many users mentioned battery life as a potential red flag.
Battery life, really?
Yeah. If the camera is secretly activated in recording, it's going to consume more power,
Okay.
which might show up as a sudden, unexplained drain on your battery.
Ah, okay.
Not a foolproof method, of course,
No.
because lots of things can affect battery life,
Right.
but it's something to be mindful of.
So it's like another layer of awareness.
Exactly.
If you notice your battery draining unusually fast,
Yeah,
it might be a sign that something's up.
exactly. And speaking of signs, we've talked about the LED light, but what about other indicators that your webcam might be compromised?
Are there other things we should be looking out for?
Some users mentioned that certain webcams make a faint clicking sound when they activate.
Oh, interesting.
Even if the LED is disabled, you might still be able to hear the camera turning on if you listen closely.
So it's like a detective game, listening for those subtle cues that something isn't right.
Exactly. It's about being attuned to those little details. Another user mentioned that some webcams emit a high-pitched whine when they're active.
Ah,
It's not always audible, but if you have good hearing, it's something to be aware of.
okay. So we've got the LED light, the battery drain, the clicking sounds, the high-pitched whine. It seems like there's a whole arsenal of clues out there if you know what to look for.
It reinforces the point that security isn't just about technology, it's about awareness and observation.
Right.
It's about trusting your instincts and being mindful of your surroundings.
And having a healthy dose of skepticism.
Exactly.
Just because a device has a security feature doesn't mean it's foolproof.
Exactly. That's why, in the end, many people feel most comfortable with physical solutions like webcam covers and kill switches.
Right.
You're not relying on software or trusting that a light is accurately reflecting the state of the camera. You're physically blocking it or cutting off its power supply.
It puts you back in control.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that we have more agency than we sometimes think.
For sure.
But it's also important to stay informed.
Right.
Technology is constantly evolving, and so are the threats. What might be considered secure today might be vulnerable tomorrow.
So what are some good ways to stay up to date on the latest security best practices and emerging threats?
Well, resources like Hacker News can be incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It's a community of tech-savvy individuals who are passionate about security and privacy.
Right.
Reading through threads like the one you shared can give you real insight into the minds of both the attackers and the defenders.
It's like a crowdsourced intelligence network, sharing knowledge and insights to help everyone stay ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And it's a reminder that security is a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
We all have a role to play in protecting ourselves and each other.
So as we wrap up part 2, what would you say are the key takeaways from our deep dive into webcam security so far? What are the most important things for listeners to remember?
Well, first and foremost, webcam security is far more nuanced than just relying on that little LED light. We've seen how those LEDs can be manipulated. And even hardware-based systems aren't always foolproof.
It's not about blind trust.
Right.
It's about understanding the potential risks and taking appropriate precautions.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Second, physical barriers, like built-in shutters or external covers, offer a higher level of confidence and control when it comes to preventing unauthorized access.
Okay.
They provide that extra peace of mind,
Right.
knowing that you're physically blocking the camera when it's not in use.
Right. Yeah.
And third, a healthy dose of skepticism about software, combined with a holistic approach to device security. Being aware of things like battery drain or unusual sounds can go a long way in protecting your privacy.
So it's about being proactive and observant,
Exactly.
not just relying on technology to do all the work for you.
Exactly. And finally, it's important to remember that security is an ongoing conversation, not a destination.
Right.
Technology is constantly evolving, and so are the threats. Staying informed and engaged is crucial.
So much great information to digest, but there's still more to come. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into that Hacker News thread, uncover those hidden gems, and connect the dots in unexpected ways.
See you in part 3.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent the last 2 parts really unpacking webcam security, and it's amazing how much there is to consider beyond that little LED light.
It's definitely more nuanced than it appears. We've discussed hardware vulnerabilities,
Right.
the importance of physical barriers, and the need for ongoing vigilance. But I think one of the most important takeaways from all this is the power of awareness.
Right. It's not just about having the latest antivirus software or a strong password. It's about being mindful, paying attention to those subtle cues we talked about, and trusting your instincts.
Precisely. And that brings us back to the value of resources like Hacker News. It's a community where people are actively sharing their experiences, knowledge, and concerns. Reading through these discussions can really open your eyes to the evolving landscape of security threats.
Yeah. It's like having a direct line to the collective wisdom of tech-savvy individuals who are passionate about protecting their privacy. And it reinforces the idea that security is a shared responsibility. We all benefit from learning from each other's experiences.
Absolutely. And this deep dive has hopefully equipped you with the knowledge to make more informed decisions about your own digital life. You've learned about the vulnerabilities, the different approaches to security, the tools available to protect yourself.
We've covered a lot of ground, but before we wrap up, is there anything else from the Hacker News thread that stood out to you? Any final insights you'd like to highlight?
Well, there was one comment that really resonated with me. It wasn't about a specific technical solution, but rather a broader reflection on the evolving relationship between convenience and privacy in the digital age.
Oh, I think I remember that one. It was about how the more we rely on video conferencing and smart devices, the more we blur the lines, right?
That's the one. It's a trade-off that we all have to grapple with. We embrace these technologies because they make our lives easier. But we also have to be mindful of the potential costs to our privacy.
It's like a constant balancing act. We want the convenience, but we also want to feel secure and in control of our data.
And that's where critical thinking comes in. We need to ask ourselves, what data are we comfortable sharing? What level of privacy are we willing to sacrifice for convenience? And what steps can we take to mitigate those risks?
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance, where we can enjoy the benefits of technology without compromising our core values.
Exactly. And that's the ultimate message I hope listeners take away from this. It's not about living in fear or rejecting technology altogether. It's about being informed, making conscious choices, taking proactive steps to protect your privacy.
So it's about empowerment,
Mm.
equipping people with the knowledge and tools to navigate this increasingly complex digital landscape.
Precisely. This deep dive has given you a glimpse into that world, the technology, the vulnerabilities, the solutions, and most importantly, the power of awareness. Now it's up to you to take that knowledge and apply it to your own digital life.
Decide where you want to draw that line between convenience and privacy, because in the end, it's your data, your life, and your choice.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into webcam security. We hope you found it insightful and empowering.
Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and stay informed.